Hello and welcome to the Bowling University studio from the International Bowling Campus in Arlington, Texas. I'm John Karabatsis and I'll be your host for this edition of the Bowling University Profit Break. Thank you for joining us. Our mission at the Bowling University is to enrich people's lives personally and professionally, and the Profit Break is an opportunity for sharing insights on how to grow revenue, reduce costs, enrich yourself, your team, and your business. If you're joining the Profit Break for the first time, welcome. We're glad you're here. Give us 15 minutes and you'll be on your way to improving your profitability. Well, we've certainly learned a lot about what to do and what not to do over the last year, and game room cranes are no exception. Our special guest today has visited over 100 family and bowling entertainment locations over the last year and is here to help us better understand the crane merchandising challenges operators face in the current environment. Mike Tipton is the Chief Growth Officer at Redemption Plus. Redemption Plus has been a Smart Buy partner for 12 years and serves the industry with redemption prizes that are curated by sales performance along with services like design, merchandising, and training that simplify redemption operations. Oh, and one more thing, Mike is also an ambassador of Play at the Toy Association. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, I have to thank you for 12 years supporting the industry as a Smart Buy partner. Thank you very much for that. You guys are awesome partners. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate that. We really enjoy it.
So before we get into it, I do have to ask you, tell me about this Ambassador of Play at the Toy Association. What is that all about?
Yeah, so the Toy Association has a program called Genius of Play, and essentially it is an educational program that we'll look at ways that play enhances the lives of children and adults. And my role as an ambassador of Play is to take the experiences that I have in our world and share that back with the group. And then they use that content to educate everyone across the toy industry and play industry. So we've got ambassadors that own, small toy stores in California, and we've got folks that are just completely different industries than what we're used to. So I'm excited to be a part of that. I just started it this year, and I'm learning all sorts of stuff already.
Wow,
so
what a fun job and fun title to have. Good for you. No wonder you're always smiling. So, hey, all right. So let's get into it. We don't have too much time. So it looks like you've been earning a lot of frequent flyer miles over the last year. That's quite an accomplishment, over 100 locations. So obviously you've learned a lot. Times are a little different than they were in the past. So maybe you can share with us, what are some of the top 3 rules of thumb on how to merchandise a crane that you can share with our audience?
Yeah, so having visited all these locations and seeing, supply chain shortages was a big factor in 2021. And a lot of people didn't even know what to put in the cranes, but merchandising the cranes was a whole set of problems. But it goes back to the basics on a lot of the merchandising, no matter what you have in there. If you're using plush, the rule of thumb on that is to make sure that you have eyes out. So you want to make sure that the plush are actually looking at the kids as they walk by. It's really hard to turn down a llama, as you see in that picture there. As you walk by, you want to play for it because you want to take it home. That's just something that's been around, pre-pandemic, but being able to utilize your merchandise now is more important than ever. So making sure that you have the eyes out is really important. The other piece of that is stadium merchandising. So what I mean by that is that you have, your plush or knobby balls or whatever in your crane, and those start low in your crane closest to the customer as they're playing for it, but they go back. Like a stadium seating. So whenever they're looking at the crane, then they're able to see the prizes from various areas in the arcade. So it's very much like redemption area where you want them to be able to see the prizes no matter what. That's the same thing with your cranes. The third is really just making sure that you have the ability to test the product before you put it in for the merchandising. So a lot of people were just kind of scrambling and getting whatever they could into the cranes. My advice would be to always take new product that you have coming into your crane and run that thing and make sure it picks it up correctly and does it, because after you've bought a case of, whatever you're putting into your crane, you're kind of stuck with it. So you want to make sure that you're testing it before you fill it all the way up. We've gotten lots of calls of panic customers that are like, oh my gosh, this crane won't work with this because it's a certain color or weight or whatever. So we just encourage that.
Excellent tips. Thank you. Cranes are such a big part of that game room, and when they're done right, they're even a bigger part. So,
absolutely.
Good tips. Thank you for that. So, good segue. You talked about trying new product, and I guess for 21 we had a lot of supply chain issues, and it was an issue getting merchandise and stuff. So, obviously, some operators were looking for alternatives. What could they put in there? What did you see for trends across the locations for plush substitutes, and did they work well for operators?
Yeah, so I saw a lot of different cranes with a lot of different types of products in them over the year. I would say that the most successful one that I saw was using large inflatables, like you see the aliens that are a couple feet tall, used in a big one crane. In lieu of the cost or just the availability of giant plush, customers are using these inflatables. Of course, they're very low cost, so the margins on that for the operator is great, but they worked really well, and you can merchandise them very easily within the big one cranes. The other things that I saw were things like using the merchandise for the actual location. So, looking at a crane and being able to say, hey, I've got these T-shirts, or I've got hats, or I've got socks even. I've seen socks in cranes. Being able to find a way to be able to kind of allow customers to play for your own merchandise. It may be for sale somewhere in your facility, but it's much more easy or much more fun to play for the same type of merchandise. So I saw some really cool merchandise, out and about whenever I visit these locations, people just getting creative with their own overstock of things. I think the baseball hats that I saw were probably the best merchandised and most popular ones that I saw in a few locations. It was really creative. And I think that's what supply chain did for us, right? It made us have to go from things that we just did over and over again because we knew they worked to really having to be creative and find new things. And I'm hoping some of these trends carry on in 2022, 2023, because they're pretty cool ideas.
And I just want to follow up on the big one too, because I mean, typically in your experience, do you find those are among the most profitable pieces in an arcade? I mean, they're up there in revenue, and usually the plush isn't all that expensive for what the charge is. So would you recommend, if somebody's got space, that they consider a giant or something similar to that?
Yeah, I think that first of all, it's just seeing the giant crane, the big one crane in this space just automatically makes you want to play for something that's oversized, right? I mean, that's kind of the ideal situation as a guest somewhere, as you walking out with the largest prize in the place. And that's the place to do it. So people will play over and over again on a machine like that. And there's a lot of different options to be able to put product in there. Like I said, the inflatables are low cost, and people will play for them until they can get them. So I think it's a really good alternative to giant plush.
And what a great marketing piece when you get somebody walking around your facility with that massive toy, whatever it is. Where'd you get that? So,
yeah, everybody in that place is going to go to that machine and start playing for it.
Great marketing. Yeah. So good. All right. Thank you for that. Good point. I love that the operators, with the baseball hats and stuff, what can I do? What can I put in there? So being creative. So thanks for sharing that. So, along those lines, so when we're talking about seasonality, we're talking about different months. So some of our operators have multiple cranes. I would say more than some. I bet you most of them have multiple cranes. And they're looking to perhaps change out what the plush is on a monthly basis or quarterly basis. Do you have some advice for them on how to plan for merchandising? We know how, we plan our marketing throughout the year. Should we plan for merchandising for multiple cranes? What advice do you have for our proprietors on that?
Yeah, so there's a couple different approaches to that. One, I think that looking at price points is really important. That way you're not having to completely re-engineer the entire thing whenever you're replacing your your product. Plus, you're going to have some product left over from, your previous order that could be mixed in, and you want all of those price points to be similar. So I would start there and looking at each crane, each price point, and planning based on that. You're going to have some cranes that are going to do really well with things that are like generic knobby balls, right? They don't have your brand on them. They're just there. Kids love the heck out of them. They'll play all day for them. That's something that you can plan for at that price point over and over again. And then on the other hand of that, you're going to have some cranes that will represent maybe generic plush. So these are plush that are going to be imported. They don't have a brand associated with them necessarily, the lower cost, but, kids will go to those cranes to be able to get a plush piece, and you'll be able to plan for that based on the price point and your size and all of that. And then the other piece of that is I would look at things that are coming out either on streaming services or movies. We used to depend on a movie calendar all sorts of ways, right? Mm-hmm. But it's kind of shifted now because cinemas can't get out fresh content to streaming services like Disney Plus. So I would look for branded plush that are going to be a higher price point, that are going to be recognizable, and then maybe have a shorter lifespan, right? You don't want to buy super deep on those. So that would be the crane that probably gets, changed out. The product gets changed out most frequently, 45, 60 days. To run through things that are going to be kind of in the spotlight. The marketing gets done for you for that type of plush, where you don't have to necessarily really try to push it. It's popular right now, and those are the types of planning that I see. I've seen operators use spreadsheets that are based on price point, and then they're looking at release dates for streaming services or movies and that type of thing. So they're planning ahead for a couple months, knowing, hey, I want to start looking for these items right now.
Great advice. And I didn't even think of that, streaming services. That's becoming, mm-hmm. Look, we all do that. We all binge, we all sit there.
They're constantly putting out new content because it's easier for them.
Great idea. Great advice. Thank you for that. One last question for you before we let you get back to your toys. Is the supply chain, is it things easing up, or, we talked, it was a challenge, we know it was, but is it getting any better?
It's stabilizing. I think towards the end of last year, December, it started to stabilize a little bit more, where vendors like ourselves are able to buy deeper and be able to just have more inventory on hand. That and a lot of shipments are finally either on the water or at the port for imports. So we're seeing, February and March for us, we were getting containers in every single week with plush, with knobby balls, that kind of thing. So that's a sign of the supply chain being able to stabilize and things actually showing up on time, where they're not 8 weeks behind or that. So I do think that the costs are still really high. A container used to be $5,000 to bring over. It's up in the $20,000 range. So the prices are going to fluctuate, but I hope to see those go down as the supply chain stabilizes in the next year or two.
All right. Thanks for that update. Okay. Well, Mike, thank you for your time today. Appreciate all your input, your advice, your passing on your travel learnings, and I love your office that you're coming to us from. I wish I had an office like that. So thank you again for your time today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So just a reminder, if any of you want to reach out to Mike directly, feel free to contact him with any questions you may have about merchandising cranes or Redemption Plus and the training they provide and so on. So as we wrap up another edition of the Bowling University Profit Break, remember that when your focus is on growing people, people will grow your business. We look forward to seeing you next time for another great episode. If you have any questions for us about today's show, or would like additional information, you can reach us anytime at education@bpaa.com. Also, all previous Profit Break episodes are available 24/7 for you and your team to watch at bowlinguniversity.net. Plus, new Profit Break episodes are available every month, so mark your calendar, watch your email, and join us on Facebook to hear about the latest episodes. Until then, I'm John Karabatsis, and do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. We'll see you next time.